We've been told that Newcastle United are expected to make an increased offer for Jurgen Strand Larsen at Wolves. Now, we saw them make a £55 million bid last night that was turned down pretty quickly by Wolves. We're now expecting them to go back in with an offer worth £60 million for Strand Larsen, and they hope that will encourage Wolves to allow him to go. From a Wolves perspective, they don't want him to leave. They're trying desperately to say he is not for sale, not just because he's such an important player for them.
Well, can't they just say he's not for sale? That's it.
Well, look, the interesting thing, Mike, is that Vitor Pereira, after that 3-2 win over West Ham last night, said every player has a price. And that seemed to be a change of tone from the club.
So he is for sale?
Well, exactly. I mean, and you and I know, we've been in this game long enough to know that every player does have a price. If you offer a ridiculous amount of money, any club would let their player go. And from a Wolves perspective, on the face of it, it would look like very good value, because they only bought him at the start of this window for £23 million as part of their obligation to buy him after he was on loan last season. £23 million you pay out at the start of the summer, you get 60 million quid back before the summer's even out. That sounds pretty good business, doesn't it? But from Wolves' perspective, they've already lost Matheus Cunha. They know that they're going to be, I think, in a battle towards the bottom end of the Premier League. A lot of tipsters are suggesting that they're one of the favourites to go down. If you sell Strand Larsen at this stage in the window, we know the problems that Newcastle have had trying to buy strikers. Who are they going to go out and get, even if they've got 60 million quid in their back pocket, in terms of a replacement? And we know that dropping out of the Premier League is worth an awful lot more than £60 million. So it's a difficult position that Wolves are in. Newcastle clearly not letting this one go, but the way it's been explained to me from a Newcastle perspective is, say they accept an offer from Liverpool for £120 million. Let's just go with that hypothesis over the next few days. If they spend 60, 70 million pounds on Strand Larsen, and then they spend 40, 50 million pounds on Yoane Wissa at Brentford, they've blown that £120 million. Yeah. And this time last season, they had Callum Wilson, albeit with some injury problems, an England striker, hugely experienced, scored goals for fun in the Premier League, and Alexander Isak, who's one of the world's best strikers, proved he can do it in the Premier League. And if you're replacing both of those without any extra money for Strand Larsen and for Wissa, that doesn't sound like a great deal for me. So that's why I understand Newcastle are trying to be prudent about this. They're in a very difficult situation, but they're not going to blow the budget on players that they don't think are worth it. Simple as that.
I think they're being very careful as well. If you go back to when the statements came out from Alexander Isak and then from Newcastle United. Alexander Isak, we know, promises were made and they've been reneged upon. Newcastle United denied that. But the important part of Newcastle United's statement was that the conditions and the terms of a deal for Alexander Isak have not been met. So while we were saying not for sale, by saying the conditions and the terms have not been met, by definition, there are conditions and terms for Alexander Isak to be sold. And those are the price, number one, and also bringing in replacements.
Is Strand Larsen the replacement for Isak?
It's been almost painted as he's going to be a replacement for Callum Wilson. But I think Newcastle United have got to be careful here as well. If that is clearly the case, that it is going to be Callum Wilson, it's almost sending a message to Liverpool as well. No, we haven't got a replacement for Alexander Isak, so we still want this amount of money if you want to come and buy him. Whereas if it was put out there, right, Jurgen Strand Larsen, he's the replacement for Alexander Isak, we can now sell him. Liverpool will say, well, you got your replacement, we don't need to pay £150 million. It should also be said, Newcastle United in that statement said, we don't expect those conditions to be met on both fronts. One, is it about the replacements? But two, probably more significantly, they probably don't expect the conditions for Liverpool to pay what they want. But is that almost a thinly veiled invitation to Liverpool? It's £110 million you've bid, that's not enough. Come back with what we want and maybe we can do business.
And a quick word on Eddie Howe here. I mean, Darmish is quite right. The people I'm speaking to are using those terms as well. A replacement for Callum Wilson, a replacement for Alexander Isak. And they have to categorise which striker they're going for. Eddie Howe doesn't give a monkeys about that. He wants two strikers in that can do a job for him in the Premier League. He's not going to have two strikers in and go, right, you're my main man, so I'm prepared to pay more money for you, and you're my second striker. It doesn't work like that. He wants two strikers that are going to compete for a starting berth, who can take and compete with Newcastle in the Premier League at the top end and the Champions League. They've had an extraordinary couple of seasons, Newcastle. They deserve to be celebrating where they are now, spending some of the riches that they've got and planning to really go at it in the Champions League. Instead, they're in a mess because of the Alexander Isak situation.
Right.
And a lot of people say that's Alexander Isak's fault.
2 questions, one for each of you. For you, Rob, is Alexander Isak going to be playing for Newcastle come the end of the window? And for you, Dharmesh, is Johan Wissa going to be playing for Newcastle come the end of the window? Rob?
I don't see any way that Alexander Isak will still be a Newcastle player by September the 2nd. I think it's an impossible situation for Newcastle. I understand why the fans are desperate for him to stay. More and more Newcastle fans that we hear from are turning against him now because of the way he's behaved in this matter. And look, in this scenario, then they'll get their move. And I think Newcastle are over a barrel and they've got no choice. I think Liverpool are playing this very, very smart. They've been absolutely silent. No briefing from the club. We haven't heard a single thing. They've thrown their grenade in, £110 million, and they've just sat there while Alexander Isak has done their work for them. I think it's been very smart from Liverpool. I think their patience will pay off. I think they'll get their man before the end of this window.
Dharmesh, Wissa.
This deal and the Isak deal, they just kind of feel like a complicated house purchase. So just say you like a house, but to get the house, there's a chain of about 3 other people that need to buy their own house before you can buy your one. Now, Isak, we've explained about the replacement situation. Johan Wissa is playing the waiting game. He wants to go to Newcastle United. Newcastle United want him. However, Brentford are only going to let him go if they find a replacement. Now, initially, I think Newcastle United might have thought Dango Ouattara's come in. So now we can go full speed ahead for Johan Wissa. But what ended up happening was that Ouattara deal was effectively a replacement for Brian Mbeumo, who'd gone to Manchester United. Now, publicly, the Brentford head coach, Keith Andrews, has been consistent. We want Johan Wissa to stay. We actually expect Johan Wissa to stay beyond deadline day. However, at the same time, when these are the public utterances from Brentford, they are, behind the scenes, looking for a replacement for Johan Wissa, because for all parties, rather like the Isak situation, it's probably best that Johan Wissa goes, Brentford get the money they need, they get the replacement they want, and Wissa gets the move that he wants, because he doesn't want to be at Brentford. He's already said, I don't intend to play for them again. I just think that if you look at the Isak statement and if you look at how Wissa has approached his saga, it's almost like they're signs of desperation. Because Alexander Isak, I think it was with 12 days to go of the window when he put out his statement. And it was basically thinking, I've now got 12 days to have any kind of influence that I can. Because come 7 p.m. on Monday, I have no further say.
Yeah.
Because if I haven't got the move, I'm stuck.
Yeah.
And then there's a whole new ball game at play. Can he get reintegrated into the squad? Is he going to maintain the stance of, I don't want to be reintegrated, I don't want to play for you again?
Whole world of pain ahead. Right, I want to talk Manchester United now. Rob, Kobbie Mainoo, he's good enough to start in the Carabao Cup, not good enough to start in the Premier League. What is the latest with him?
Well, he's good enough to start in a European Championship final for England last summer as well. Look, Dharmesh has done an awful lot of work on this story, so I need to give a nod to him on this one as well. Manchester United are expecting offers for him. I think the fact that he hasn't played a single minute of football in the Premier League yet this season under Ruben Amorim has made it a pretty clear signal to all of the clubs out there that they would potentially do a deal for him. We understand that those clubs are both in the Premier